Hello, we are the Lorcana Twins, and today we are discussing three new cards that were revealed much sooner than we thought we'd be getting new cards because we did get a few new cards 2 days ago. And so it's pretty nice how the pace of the reveals seems to be picking up lately.
Yeah, because before that, it'd been almost a month or more since we'd had a card reveal. So
Yeah,
it's really exciting
I
to
woke
see.
up this morning and my brother was all excited and he asked me if I'd seen the new cards, and I said that I hadn't, and I had just gotten up, but I tried to refrain as long as I could from looking at these because he said there was a legendary card and he thought all three were pretty cool. And I lasted for about 1 minute before I whipped out my phone and got on the Discord and saw the cards for myself, and I wasn't disappointed because these are some pretty sweet reveals.
Yeah, so we're going to get right into it with the common card first that was revealed today, and that is Archimedes.
Yes, now Archimedes, he is a highly educated owl, but I don't think you have to be too educated to understand this card because he is pretty basic. He is a 1-cost inkable with a 2/2 stat line and 1 lore pip, so this is very standard across all of the inks. So far we've seen 5 cards that have this identical, cost to stat line. And so it seems like every ink is definitely getting one of these. The only one we haven't seen is the Emerald version, but Archimedes here is from Sword in the Stone, so if you're a fan of that film, and if you like this character, I think you'll be pretty excited. He looks visually great as well.
He does.
And he's got some long flavor text if you're into flavor text.
Yep. And I've been rewatching a lot of Disney movies lately, getting ready for the release of Lorcana, and The Sword in the Stone was a film where I couldn't remember if I'd ever actually watched it start to finish before. I know I'd seen parts of it, but I went and rewatched it. That was just a couple films back, and so recently saw it, really liked the movie, and Archimedes was a cool character and a fun include from there, so I'm very glad to see him in card form.
Yeah, I think I watched this movie last maybe about a year ago or actually maybe 2 years ago, I was playing some Disney Sorcerer's Arena, and they had some characters from that film in there, and I knew I'd seen it when I was pretty young, but I didn't remember it very well, so I checked it out too, and I thought it was a pretty fun movie.
Yep, so now we're just kind of waiting on Madame Mim, maybe Arthur, maybe Merlin. But yeah, it's cool to see that Archimedes is in here, so I think some of those other options are maybe some shoo-ins. But now we will look at the next card, which has, unlike the first one being vanilla, this one has an ability, or a keyword. It is Rafiki, Mysterious Sage. He's a 3-cost non-inkable with 3 strength and 3 willpower and 1 lore, and then he has Rush, which is interesting to see. This is the first card that has Rush printed on it as a keyword. We'd seen the Pocket Watch, the White Rabbit's Pocket Watch, that costs 3 in Amethyst that can grant Rush to your characters. But this one here just already has it. So it's interesting. You can compare it to Kristoff. They're both 3-cost 3/3s. But the difference being Kristoff can be inked and he has 2 lore, whereas Rafiki has only the 1 lore and cannot be inked. So you would run those for very different reasons. And Rafiki, I guess you could hold on to him in your hand until you have an advantageous moment to surprise your opponent, rush in and maybe clear something off that they left exerted, whether they sang a song or did a different challenge with it. But yeah, Rafiki seems like he has a lot of potential. And
And the trade-off here is definitely that he can't be inked because, there will be some matchups where, let's say, your opponent puts a wardrobe down on turn 3, same cost, but has that extra 1 willpower being a 3/4, same lore amount as well. So if they drop a wardrobe and then you're looking at your hand and you're like, well, I've got this Rafiki I can't ink, and now he doesn't trade into wardrobe. So, there's going to be times where he might not feel like the best card to have stuck in your hand, but, ideally he'll make an early game trade, and hopefully kind of at least hit another 3 damage into something else.
Yeah, and if nothing else, I mean, in the case of the wardrobe, let's say, you could still play the Rafiki and actually not utilize his rush, just leave him unexerted so that he's not vulnerable to an attack, just hold off until, a favorable trade does present itself. And then at least, he is able to get some lore, because you could also kind of, if you treat this as like a 3-cost removal, in a sense, with rushing in, you could compare it to the Smash card, which deals 3 damage for a cost of 3, and that one can actually be inked. But at least like Rafiki, if he survives the initial challenge that he does, you can start collecting lore off of him. So that's the trade-off.
Smash is nice too, though, since it's inkable and you can target things that aren't exerted as well. So I think Rafiki really, the value is going to be if you can find a surprise trade, or your opponent may be quested with something and they didn't factor in that you might be holding a Rafiki in your hand, and suddenly it's vulnerable to him and they weren't expecting it. So But again, maybe he's a card you might want to put a couple of in your deck, depending on, what kind of a build you're going for. I think if you jam too many of these in there, it might be just too clunky. And, I'd probably rather play a better stat line. But definitely the ability to rush is great. So I think
very important.
Maybe having a couple in your deck could be a good option.
Yeah, and I think it's just so exciting to see like all these different options that you can put in your deck, different ways to remove things, different units, different stat lines. It's really going to make deck building fun and exciting. You never know what kind of deck you're going to be sitting across from.
And this is one of my favorite arts, I think, that I've seen so far. I just love how mystic it does feel. The way like there's kind of some swirling energy around him.
Yeah, amazing job on this piece.
And his eyes are kind of glowing, and he definitely looks like a mysterious sage. So
yeah, it definitely looks like a nice piece of art for a trading card game. So
and now we will move on to the legendary reveal, which is in the Emerald ink.
Yes.
And we have seen Beast before in steel, and interestingly enough, he has the exact same cost of 5, except this one's not inkable, whereas the steel one is. And then he has the 4/4 stat line as well. But this Beast is Wolfsbane, and he also has the rush keyword. So like Rafiki, he can challenge the turn that he has played. And he has the same lore as the Steel Beast, so really the only difference between the two beasts is that this one has rush where the other one doesn't, and he has a different effect. So when you play this beast, you get to exert all opposing damaged characters. And so what's nice about that is anything that you exert off that effect is something that the beast can then immediately challenge into due to his rush keyword. So of course the trade-off is that he is not inkable, so I do think that could be an issue in terms of if he's stuck in your hand from turn 1, he's got that 5 cost. He's not going to be able to be played for a while. And when you do play him, maybe your opponent's characters are already exerted, and in which case you can still challenge them with the rush. So at least for that, it kind of is like a catch-up card.
Yeah, it's interesting because he costs 2 more than Rafiki and only has an extra 1 strength and 1 willpower. He does have that 1 extra lore if he sticks around, and I think it's his ability that really will determine whether or not he sees a lot of play. So yeah, it'll just be interesting to see if you could also combo this with a different card. Let's say a card on play like deals 1 damage to a target character. You could, pick a character you want Beast to be able to rush into and then deal the damage to them so that he's able to exert him with his ability when you play him down.
So yeah, if you combo him with like Fire the Cannons, that combo would cost 6 already. So, the more expensive your other combo piece is, then the later in the game that you're going to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, I do think Fire the Cannons is a good example because that would totally cost 6 and the cannons would deal 2 damage and then he'd be able to clean up with 4 more. So that would be able to take out anything with, 6 willpower or less. So that's, an interesting combo there, especially if you're into that Emerald Steel, which is looking to be a very fun combination.
But then even with that, you have to be, you'd be holding 2 non-inkable cards, and that's 2 cards that you're spending to maybe get rid of one thing. So
it's difficult to say, yeah, if it'll just eat up too many cards and require like too much setting up to make this worthwhile or not.
I think he's going to be really situational, and depending on how your opponent is playing too, if they don't, if they're kind of holding cards back and not exerting them, and then they don't have any damage tokens, this might be kind of an expensive rush card that, the stats, you could get something better. Like, for 5 in Emerald, you could play a Jumba, have an inkable card, so if you want to ink it early, that's fine. But then when it is on board, it's a 4/5 with 2 lore. The Beast wouldn't be able to clear that on its own. So it's just interesting, this trade-offs, of course, but Rush, again, could definitely bring some value, and I like that Emerald has it now because, Rafiki is an Amethyst, so this gives Emerald that same keyword.
Yeah.
And it seems like the only one so far in Emerald that does. And, we know the Pocket Watch is also an Amethyst like Rafiki, so far only two inks we know of that can rush at this point.
Yeah, and if there's some type of card that does like an AoE damage to all of the opponent's characters, then that would really set up Beast well to be able to, take his pick of who he wants to rush into, because he'd be able to exert their entire board. And then that also would set up, any other units you already have on your field to be able to trade into some of the opponents. So yeah, I guess it just depends how people play, because yeah, some people might not initiate challenges unless they get a clean hit, and in that case they would be left with some damage on it, and if they then decided to kind of hold those units back and not exert them anymore until they could guaranteed, get another clean trade. This would be a good way to play around that.
And I think interestingly too, like definitely some of the costs that you're paying for in this card is to get this exert effect off. And if your opponent is already questing or challenging with their minions, it might be that they're already exerted, and then part of what you're paying for this card and the non-ink ability
just be not needed
is giving you an effect that's like already basically in play. They're already exerted in some cases. So I don't know how much value this will get. I could see definitely running a couple copies of this in a deck, just because like the other legendaries we've seen are pretty high costed, 8, 8, and 9 for the Mickey and the Gantu and the Maleficent. But this one is only 5, so it's definitely lower to the ground. You should be able to get it out, much sooner than some of those other.
Yeah, I think this one will be important.
Maybe more playable.
This one will be important to play test and to see how it functions in a deck, and if it is able to do good things and merit the include, or if it's one that you don't necessarily want to include in the deck. But I really love the art. I think it's an epic, shot from the film.
I think the wolf in the background there in the upper right corner that's like staring at the beast from behind looks like he's maybe about to pounce. Like that's pretty cool how he's kind of hiding behind that tree branch. And yeah, this is a Dreamborn version of Beast, so perhaps in this version of him, he never turned back into the prince, and he just kind of hunts wolves, or, who knows. But I really like the overall imagery on this, and I like how his brooch on his cloak is kind of glowing with some emerald smoke there. So
Yep, and they work that cape color to fit the emerald theme, and that's really cool. So yeah, love the look of this card, and I'd definitely be excited to open one in a pack. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we're really excited about these reveals, and so thank you, Lorcana and Ravensburger, and we hope you keep up the nice work and keep revealing these things as we get closer to the release date.
There's not a card I've seen that I haven't liked so far. They all just look very exciting and, interesting in their own way, and I don't think there's a single card that, you could completely write off and say, oh, that'll never be in any deck, especially when we haven't seen all the rest of the set. There's a lot of potential for cards that might not appear to be super playable at first glance to really actually find value in certain decks. So
I think this game's going to have so much flexibility in deck building, and you can always try to put in your favorite character, if you just I really want to play that character in a deck because I love that movie, or that that character is your favorite or whatever, just build it how you want. I think every card can be competitive, and unless it's like a non-inkable card that's has basically no value, but so far everything we've seen I think has a place in a deck.
Yep, and
that's
visually,
really cool.
Visually I just love the art and the design of the card itself and the way it's set up, and really cool to see. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be waiting to see those next reveals. And
the hype keeps building, and we're glad that we're getting closer to that release, because it's going to be really fun when this game is out there and we can all play together. So
Yep, and we never know what card we'll be talking about in our next video, so it kind of depends what we see get revealed, and I know we're all waiting excitedly for that next reveal together. So thanks for tuning in.
Yep, and have a nice weekend, everyone, and thank you again.
Catch you next time.